Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I'm joined by my co host and producer, Holly Deschenes. So, today we're going to get into this idea of owning your power. We're calling it permission to walk away. So, walking away is our power. And it's really about owning your value. And honestly, it boils down to self respect as well. So, a lot of times we stay in situations longer than we need to. And that can lead to burnout, exhaustion. It can really hurt our self-worth too. There's situations where we maybe need to stick with it longer to learn some things, but that's the motivation is to find that strength within yourself. And in any relationship, or it could be a job, or it could be any of these other situations, it's more about for you're not feeling valued. There's something within you that's allowing that to happen. Basically, you are putting up with it for an exchange of some sort. This could be people pleasing. It could feel like you don't have options. It's just kind of understanding that the way you create options is to really own your value more. And so we're going to be getting into why this happens, how to maneuver through it, and how to really connect to your own value and strength. And just like many things we talk about here, all this stuff does stem back to our upbringing and like how we related with our caregivers and if we had access to pursue the things we wanted or if we felt shut down and felt like we just had to go along with things. So yeah, it's about raising your standard and it's a bit of a journey usually. So as we open about this, Holly, is there anything that comes to mind?
No, I think it's a good topic. I also am, curious as you're opening up and we're thinking about how we're raised and how that contributes to the decision to stay in places longer and things like that. I'm just wondering if you have an example you can share or something like that of what it really looks like to be in a situation, maybe because you were taught.
Yeah, I mean, these are generally complex situations. So not every situation is all bad, right? There are some that are mostly bad. And that's kind of, if we've kind of been brought up in an environment where you didn't have options, where you just had to go along with things. Otherwise, there was maybe volatile emotions around. If it was kind of fear-based caregiving, that would be anytime we step out, anytime we speak up, anytime we own our power, there can be serious consequences to those things. A big problem we see is people staying in relationships that maybe not be physically abusive, but that does exist. But then there's also emotionally abusive or feeling like I have to just defer to the person on everything where I'm just kind of giving myself up every step of the way and they're in complete control. And these things kind of plays on all that younger stuff. So yeah, it could be I fear leaving the relationship because one, what is this person going to do? Is there going to be backlash on the other side of that? Is that, am I very intertwined with this person? Meaning, yeah, like if you've been in a relationship a long time, there may be finances and a house and kids and like all those things, right? Where that's part of what keeps us in it is it's not a simple, straightforward like exit. It could be with a job where I rely on this for a paycheck and I don't really believe in myself to do something different or to create other options. Those are the common ones we see where it's just like the longer we stay in it, the more we settle. And it doesn't always have to be me actually walking away. I just need that ability to, because if I'm on the losing end of things, if I'm not feeling valued, the only thing that would change that in any scenario is me stepping more into my value and me be willing to walk away because that's a consequence to the other side. So I'm not just going to stay here and put up with all this stuff. And so that's like bringing things to the awareness of the dynamic. So that could be the job or the relationship where I'm at letting them know that I'm not happy as is. I'm not going to settle here. And so that gives them the opportunity to make some shifts and changes and adjustments where, because if somebody's got the upper hand in a power dynamic, that serves them. It's more of why would they change things if they didn't have to? So that's the power of consequences. If you don't change, then I have to go somewhere where I feel more valued. And so these things generally happen because of low self-worth. We've kind of learned that It's easier to go along with things. It's easier to just fall in line because at least we get some sort of safety security out of it. And that's that link to our caregivers where maybe we had to self-sacrifice a lot. Maybe we had to kind of pretend we were somebody we were not. We had to go along with things, but that's us getting our needs met, our survival needs, especially. I might not, I might have a roof over my head. I might have clothes. I might have food, but I might not feel love for my parents. I might not get the emotional needs met. We often see this kind of transfer into career where it's just going along with this because I'm getting my security, my survival needs met, but there's little else coming out of it. And I feel like, and that's where burnout and exhaustion happens is we get kind of locked into like, oh, this is what I have to do to get by. There's always like varying degrees of that, of like at one point or another, like that may be need what we need to do at that phase in our life. We're talking about a growth process. We're talking about, well, we don't want to operate that way the entirety of our life because that's not going to be fulfilling. Yeah, I'm not going to have a connection to who I am and what I want. I'm just going to be kind of giving into my environment. So whatever's around me, I just defer. That's where a lot of our regrets come in. We're not pursuing the things that are meaningful to us, or we might not even have clarity on that. We might not know what that is because we've never allowed ourselves to go there. And that's like part of owning your value, owning your power. Is you came here for a reason. You have gifts and skills, things that are important to you. And any of us feel the best we can when we're in that mode, when we're utilizing those things, when we're appreciated for those things, when we're recognized for those things. If we're not setting up our environment to be supportive of that, we can't, it's going to be difficult to stay connected to it. And we're going to, what these things do is they create these internal conflicts, right? Where it's, hey, I have this desire out here, but when I look at my current situation, this is meeting needs on a certain level. The brain is kind of wired this way. So we have the three levels of the brain where there's the survival brain, there's the emotional brain, and then there's kind of that higher thinking. And we're trying to shift to those higher levels because that's where you're going to find fulfillment. That's where you're going to be able to really connect to yourself is when we step out of just getting by, just being in survival all the time. That's the stage of kind of just existing. Like, and I'm also reactive to my impulses. If a fear gets activated in me, like I just start to move to soothe that fear. And that might create these loops where I feel like I'm stuck in the same situation forever. It's about elevating out of that, getting to higher thinking. And the way we do that is we work through these emotions, right? Because it's anchored in not feeling good enough. It's anchored in not feeling like I have a choice. These are the things I have to do in order to gain approval from other people, especially caregivers. We're always seeking that. So it's more of this knowing our baseline level is to operate that way. And if that's not working anymore, if we have this pull for this brighter future, which is a main idea I always talk about, is like I have to believe that other things are possible for me. And those things should excite me on some level. And if we latch onto something that has a big enough pull on it, that's what draws us to the growth process of like, okay, how can I do things differently? Where can I form some boundaries to protect my energy more? Where can I take some steps to move towards the things that I want? And we may just be too anchored to the past. If the past is too strong, we don't even allow ourselves to go there. For me, it was always this kind of foreign idea. I remember when I was a kid, I was just like, I was looking at the adults around me and I was just like, yeah, they don't seem very happy. They're like stressed all the time. And so I came to the conclusion, like, kind of being an adult sucks. And so it took this, I was like, well, I don't want to be that way. And so what I did is I like polarized and I like kind of pushed against taking on responsibility. Right. And that created its own set of problems, but it also like got me to disengage from that way of being and try to forge my own path. Okay. And yeah, there was like, I was kind of caught in the middle of like needing to meet survival needs, but then also like believing that other things were possible for me. It's kind of this like wrestling with, yeah, I don't want my life to be simply about money's all that matters and trying to just please the people around me and not going after the things that really matter to me. It's this journey you take where those things are within you. It's more of this like it's a phase, it's a stage, and we can be there as long as we want. And many of us start there of like, okay, I'm having to trade parts of myself in order to survive. And then that second part of the brain, it's that emotional piece. And so the emotion is tied to the survival. So if I have fear, if I have shame, if I have things like that, I'm still like anchored at those lower levels. Because anytime an emotion gets activated, it's pulling up those safety beliefs. It's pulling up the survival beliefs. And that's what my thought process is about. Is like I'm just trying to avoid pain. And so we're trying to seek fulfillment and pleasure like from a deeper purpose kind of standpoint, not necessarily the survival pleasure of just trying to procreate. Because that's a version too of like we just see it's like, okay, well, yeah, that these like lower level things are that's where I get my pleasure, but that's still keeping us in survival mode. The higher levels, it's about finding your purpose. It's about having a deeper meaning, a deeper connection. That's what we're always trying to get access to with this work is we're trying to clear out their survival beliefs and those patterns. It's getting to this place of, well, yeah, this was a phase and I learned to be this way, but if I'm burned out, exhausted, not very happy, feel like I'm not really living my life, if I'm just going along with things, that can feel like I have no options. And so when we start to build up to that higher thinking, part of it's going to be this personal responsibility of like, I'm just showing up in a way that allows this to happen. I'm not owning my strength. I'm not owning my gifts. I'm I'm kind of still in that dynamic where I'm just listening to every authority figure and I feel like I don't have a choice. So we work our way up to getting stronger and stronger. And then eventually it's starting to instill this belief that I can have different. I can be more conscious about my choices and I can move into something that feels more authentic for me. And these things do take work because the fear is powerful, the programming's powerful. It's been there your whole life. And that's what creates these internal conflicts. As soon as I have a desire, my mind's going back to my past, being like, well, like, is this possible for me? Is this true? Because it's formed, our expectations are just simply the accumulation of our past. And so if something hasn't happened to me yet, I don't fully believe that's possible. And what we're trying to do is that's why visualization works. That's why being around helpful, supportive people that maybe are at higher levels than us. Like that's why it helps to be around that because we can start to conceptualize what the path looks like and that it is possible. The most inspirational stories are generally people that started at the bottom. They might have been homeless at some point. They might have encountered all these struggles. They had a rough go to start with, and then they worked their way up to all those challenges that come with it. They work their way up to some like master skill where they're operating at this higher level, but then they are at peace and they are grateful and they carry this energy because they've experienced all aspects, right? So they've worked all the way from survival to this kind of higher purpose. And once you like climb that ladder, you develop this like new relationship with yourself. You treat the other people around you better because you know what it's like to be in those struggles. And when you're on the other side of it, now you have wisdom to share with people on how to get out of that. So what's the cost of staying in things too long? Yeah, it is going to be those ideas, burnout, exhaustion, not feeling inspired by anything, not trusting yourself, just deferring to everybody else. But then it's just we look back at our life and I feel like I've wasted a lot of time. I've stayed in this thing so long because we stay in things as long as we're getting something out of it on some level. And that could mean it's proving us right. It could mean it validates our low self-worth. When I learned that lesson of like, oh, I don't have to be this way, that's what allows us to branch out. But it's like that phase can last as long as we want it to. And so that's why, these beliefs are so powerful is because they form this self-image. It's who we believe we are and who we believe we are in the world. And so any transformation is really about an identity shift. We have to carry ourselves differently. We have to have this healthier relationship with ourselves. We have to build that on trust and compassion and all those good things that allow us to move into the unknown. And that's the thing. So our mind automatically is going to fear the unknown. And if we're really anchored in survival, it's going to put a high emphasis on that, where I'm not going to be able to take the steps. I'm going to have risk adversity, meaning like I'm not going to take these steps that I perceive as like threats or risks to me. And that's going to be very limiting. I'm more apt to form this like safety security bubble. And I'm going to be very reactive emotionally, meaning like anytime I bump up against a security belief, I'm going to have a big emotional reaction. I'm going to feel like I need to protect myself, right? That's what takes us off track. That's what doesn't give us access to the higher levels is we just get wrapped up in our emotional responses rather than working through them and understanding them and processing them and letting them go. And so when we stay in the wrong place too long, it can really hurt our confidence. Like it becomes this idea, this is like all I know. I don't know any different. And so why would I expect more? Why would I believe that things could be better if this is all I know? That's why it's so important to get experiences, to put yourself out there in new ways. We're always talking about getting out of your comfort zone. And so that's really that idea of like, well, your comfort zone is built on these safety security beliefs. And if we're not challenging them, they basically shrink over time. Okay. It's because we keep validating them. And so it gets more and more rigid the longer we operate from them. We're talking about this psychological flexibility and we're trying to shift how our mind sees the situation because how I'm seeing it is keeping me locked into survival. It's keeping me telling myself the same story over and over again. And so I get the same results. These are their emotional responses linked to a narrative that is about who I believe I am. And so we have to question that and we have to start to dismantle it in order for us to step into, yeah, was I really not worthy and deserving? And yeah, do I deserve respect just because like I'm here on this planet, right? Like this, those are things it's just like, well, I was just kind of taught this way of being, right? And that's what we started with. That's the hand you're dealt. And we can always climb out of it, but that takes us thinking differently. That takes us seeing these situations differently. And generally, the first step when we break out of it is whatever we're living. It's just like I get fed up with it. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use the anger of all the bitterness and resentment and regret and all those things of the life unlived. And I'm going to use that to fuel me to try and drive massive effort to something. Right. And that might serve me, right? But it's still operating under the idea that I'm not good enough. So that helps us work really hard to develop a skill that is going to give us access to a higher level if we keep going. And eventually, that skill will take us so far, and we've got to drop the low self-worth stuff at some point and all that pain attached to it. Because if not, that's going to keep us anchored at a lower level still. That's where we see people that are just simply like obsessed with like money and materialism and things like that is like they're still carrying all that pain because their wounds are around not having enough. Their wounds are around scarcity and just getting by. And they don't want to go back to that. But so you could start to form kind of more of a tyrant mentality of like, okay, well, that's fueled by anger where we're just kind of taking advantage of people or yeah, maybe we're not very kind to the people around us and we're ruling by fear from that place. Maybe we've gotten to an elevated place, but we're still in this survival thinking and that's still going to make us miserable. So that's the example of somebody that could have it all, but they still feel empty inside and it's never enough. And so they just think they need more and more, and that's going to help them feel better. But it never does because it's still built on this shaky foundation. All we're trying to do is unpack that stuff. And so we want to operate under this idea of I've always been worthy, I've always been good enough, I've always been deserving, I've always deserve respect and to be seen, to be heard. I have a voice. So we came here with all that and we were taught to shut that down. And that's what the pain is when we shut it down now, and it's not acceptable in certain environments. Now I have to just survive. And so that means like, yeah, maybe I don't use my voice. Maybe I don't pursue the things I want. Maybe I just go along with everything because that's what meets my base level needs. We're always trying to climb our way out of that. And so that's what owning your power is and really embodying your value is if I deserve better and you underneath it all, you deserve better, but you still might have a lot that's stacked on top of that says the opposite. Okay. And that's what these internal conflicts are. That's why it's difficult to make change. That's why it's difficult to make progress. Is every step forward I take, my mind's going to pull up instances that basically prove the opposite. It's like we're going to always try to prove what we believe about ourselves. And these things are stacked on top of what our true nature. And our true nature is just we're automatically deserving, automatically good. But now it's like whatever I believe about myself, that's the filter I have. And that filters my actions. That filters the lens in which I see situations. So I might have opportunities all around me, but I won't be able to see those because I'm kind of fixated in this negative orientation. It's about continually expanding your mind, continually shifting out of the pain, because the pain is what causes us to protect ourselves. And so when we start to climb the ladder, we're going to be confronted with our pain, and that's our opportunity to change it. It's like our mind's bringing up, hey, like this is what you believe. Do you want to continue to believe it? And so this is where you see people that are taking steps forward, but then they hit a wall and then they go back to what they normally do. But once you expand, you can't really go back, because when you go back, you have this awareness that things could be different. And so that actually makes you feel worse and worse and worse over time. Okay. And that's where we really have a lot of regret is I might have started on a path, but I didn't follow through. I didn't stick with it. I'm functioning back in this old mode that I questioned, that I was trying to break out of, but then now I don't believe it's possible for me to break out of it. That disappointment and letdown can be really debilitating, because we start to believe that there's not other opportunities out there for us. And so it's about surrendering the wounds, really coming to peace with them, because that's really the only thing that anchors you to your past. And that's what anchors you to that survival thinking.
Let's talk a little bit about, well, I have a couple thoughts, but let's talk a little bit about reframing this idea of walking away, because I think it's important for people. It can be easy to just see it purely as a negative thing or everything you might lose. So let's talk about reframing it. But then also, I would love for you to say a little bit more around the idea of the willingness, and how the willingness, which is in my mind sort of like the backup plan, how that plays into the walking away, when maybe you don't actually have to fully walk away, but you have to somehow embody the willingness to do that.
We've talked about this a number of times. It's about the energy we're bringing to the table. If I feel like I can't walk away and I just leave it there, but things are going to stay the same. But if I start to question that, if I start to detach from that, and I start to kind of step more into my value, now that's where I'm starting to show up differently. I am more detached from it. I'm not getting plugged into the fear-based thoughts over and over again, because that's what weakens us. Kind of get to this place of take it or leave it, right? And that's a powerful place to be, right? Because it's like, hey, I'll stay here if I feel valued, but if I'm not, then I believe in my ability to create other opportunities. That it's that detachment that really gives us our power, because our mind, it's simply based on our past. And so it just wants to know what to expect. And so it's trying to keep the continuity going. Our thoughts are going to be a reflection of that. That's why we get anxieties and fears when we go to take new steps, is because our nervous system's, well, I don't know, is this safe? I'm not sure. And so when we do that over and over, when we take new steps over and over again, we start to understand that process. We start to understand like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to feel a little bit of anxiety, right? I'm going to have self-doubt, but that doesn't mean I stop. Okay. That means that's part of it. That's my mind telling me that it's worried about something. And if I keep moving through it, I'm going to gather some evidence that might point to a different conclusion. And once I find some new ideas to latch onto, that starts to dismantle the old stories, right? Because I'm like, oh, that's actually not true. Because a belief is something we think is absolutely true. We don't question it. And all we're doing here is questioning our beliefs, because that's our operating system. When I start to soften the belief because I'm getting evidence that points to other conclusions, I might be like, oh, this way of thinking like doesn't make sense anymore. Or I don't know why I was thinking that way. When we detach from things, when we start to create that space of me being willing to walk away, I'm starting to see that situation differently, where I'm not latching onto it. When I'm latching onto it, I'm engaged with all the survival. But if I create some space and I just tell myself like, hey, it's going to be okay. Like I do, we start to build the case of like, why I could create other options and like things I'm actually good at, my achievements or success in certain areas being like, okay, well, yeah, I used to not be very good at that, but now I'm pretty good at it. So like you kind of start to see the journey. And when we zoom out, we're able to kind of see all those dynamics where these rigid beliefs that might have kept us safe when we grew up, like that's the exact thing that's holding us back now. When we start to create that space, our whole demeanor shifts, right? We're able to take more risks because I'm not functioning from fear anymore. It's that fear that keeps us playing small. We just kind of view it as, well, when I take new steps, there are going to be things that stir within me. I am going to have some fears, some anxieties, but that's part of the process. And that's why we move into discomfort and then we reconcile the discomfort, meaning we soothe ourselves. Hey, it's going to be okay. Like, this isn't that big a deal. It's not the end of the world. I'm a fully functioning human being. I can make things happen if I need to. So that's where we start to have that ability to, when I carry that energy, people around me start to treat me differently. Okay. Because I'm in this expansive mode rather than the shut down mode now. And so that affects how I show up. And then people are going to be relating to me differently because I'm operating from that space. So I'll generally automatically get more respect because I feel like I have options. You see this commonly in dating when people latch on and they're like desperate for something that like sabotages the relationship every time. But if it's like, hey, like I believe in my ability to create more options, so I'm just going to see how this goes. And if this person's a match, great. If we need to create some alignments, great. But like I'm able to like stand my ground. Okay, I'm able to really get connected to my value system because part of owning our value is like having a value system, like a code of conduct, a standard we live by. The way I operate, I'm probably going to want people around me that operate in a similar manner because those are the people that are going to understand me the best. When there's these huge gaps and these huge disconnects of like, if somebody has a really low standard for the way they carry themselves, and I hold myself to a high standard, there's this huge gap to kind of overcome there. But if we were at that point at one time and we've came out of it, now we have compassion for that, right? Where we can see like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to struggle with those things, but I don't do that anymore. And that's still an emotionally detached place where I'm not getting wrapped up in the lower level stuff, but I'm actually able to see it differently where I feel like I've conquered it. And so from that place, I can support that person or I can maybe point out some next steps for them, those types of things. And so, yeah, everything is this constant reframing, and we have to be able to see these things in a healthy way that gives us access to the brighter future. Underneath it all, we came here with worth. We were just taught we don't have it in certain ways. And so it's connecting back to the truth. Okay? So the truth is like, well, I was born on this planet. I'm here. I'm here for a purpose. I might not know what that is, but I was taught pretty much whatever my parents taught me and my teachers and coaches and whoever was around. I just absorbed that information, but it's not really me. That's not my information. I get to choose my information. It takes work to unpack that and let that go. We're stepping out of this kind of performing and more into authenticity. And what that is like, I don't have to earn other people's respect and approval and things like that. It's more of like an inside job. Like I have to connect to my own worth, my own approval, my own self validation, my own self trust, my own confidence. And as I embody that, I show up differently and people treat me differently. That's kind of that idea of like, I need to see things in a way that serves me in order to build confidence. We shift out of the fear based decision making and into more of what's aligned with our values. Okay. And so to get aligned with our values, we do have to create space. That's what boundaries are, is like, I need to, because we tend to get lost in other people's emotions. And especially if we're raised in a household where there was a dominant personality with volatile emotions, we tend to enmesh, which just means we get wrapped up in whatever they're feeling and then we think it's us. And so part of it's we're trying to separate out so we can get clear on who we are first. And once I spend that, and that's why I always recommend meditation, sitting time, having time in silence, being with yourself. If you're always just in action, you're not connecting to that stuff. You're just running patterns. Okay. And the patterns are built over your life, and that's what you've always done. And so if we're going to make changes, we need separation, we need time alone. to get clear on who we are. And once we do that work, that's why we always recommend some prompts, some journaling. Let's question things. Let's take a deeper look, because that's what connects us to ourself, our true nature. And our true nature is who we were before all the stuff happened. The things that excite you, the things that interest you. It's getting connected to that stuff. And then when I'm connected to it, now I start making decisions based on that, not just the scarcity and the fear, right? It's like, it starts to step out of like, yeah, this is what it would feel like for me to truly live. Okay. But this is just me getting by. Okay. And so we start to have this separation of, yeah, I know what choosing fear over and over again does for me. It puts me in this place where I'm shut down. I'm just getting by. I feel like I need to protect myself all the time. I'm reactive. I just get plugged into emotions. And so when we come out of that, now it's just like, what do I really want? And then if there's something that's really exciting to us, if there's something that has a deeper purpose for us, what we're willing to do is take the steps necessary to make that happen, because that's got a lot more energy to it than the past. The past is kind of dead, but we just keep reawakening it, and we keep using it as our reason not to move forward. And so that's what this work is reconciling the past so that it's natural for us to move forward, because that is our nature, is we're always meant to continually grow and evolve. And if you stop doing that, now we've just gotten anchored and stuck somewhere in the past. And so it's just about creating the space, getting clear on things, zoning into something that's got enough juice behind it where you're like, yeah, I'm willing to take these steps. I'm willing to take the risks. I'm willing to kind of break the cycles, because we could start to imagine what life would be like if we're operating that way. And so that's what life really is connecting to that. It's stepping out of all the fear. And every time it comes up, we do want to reframe it. So it's like, okay, yeah, this is what I was taught. We question, is it true? Like, or was a lot of these things, our situation is very different now, but our mind still thinks it's the same as when we were a kid. Okay. And so that's the problem with all these things, is we don't have access to that higher thought. We just have access to the survival thinking. And so you see this commonly with people that have done really well financially. They've gotten to this place where they just have all this excess, but they're still in the survival mode with it. Like nothing's ever good enough. They always need more. That's where that idea of greed comes from, is I'm like really in this place of not feeling good enough. And I think the money gives me value. And so I just need more and more of it to feel good enough. But the problem's inside. Okay. So our circumstances could be dramatically different, but we're still operating on the base level thinking, which honestly, if you're not functioning from it, it's kind of weird. You're like, yeah, why does this person think this way? That's not their situation at all. I would say money is a big one, like where you commonly see that, where people are very scarcity mindset, even if they have excess. So it's just continually updating your software, getting up to speed with reality of like, I'm not the same person I was when I was a 5-year-old, but my mind may be playing those tapes. My mind may be bringing that to the surface constantly. And when it brings it to the surface, that's our opportunity to change it. It's here. Okay. Like, is this actually true? Does this make sense for my life now? Does this support where I want to go? If not, we start to take the energy out of it, and now it no longer has that power over us.
Let's talk a little bit about what might prevent somebody from embodying that willingness to walk away. And you touched on it a little bit just now, talking about the ideas around scarcity and things like that. But let's talk about a few others.
So number one is that scarcity mindset of there's never enough. Yeah, because some of us may have lived in environments where we didn't know when the next meal was coming and that kind of stuff. We're gonna be able to make ends meet. And so that scarcity mindset can be very powerful. And so it's always about shifting out of that. I think we throw out the term abundance a lot, but it's more, is it the same situation? Do I believe in my ability to create more? Do I need to carry these kind of low level thought processes that keep me anchored to just feeling like there's never enough? Because our mind is always going to be occupied with it, and it's going to basically make us miserable, where it's always just going to be about self-preservation. The next one would be like with people pleasing. So that generally comes from when there's these volatile personalities that dominate around us. We learn to stay safe by just doing whatever they want. And so that's what creates that dynamic or there was like harsh consequences. If I started to speak up or if I started to take my own path, like, yeah, maybe there was a lot of backlash behind that. And so it's like safer and easier to just go along with the dominant personality. And so with that, it's generally we're around people that aren't in control of their emotions. They're very emotionally immature. And we could see a lot of a lot of tantrums, a lot of guilt tripping, a lot of shaming, and all that stuff's designed to keep you at that lower level too, right? Because that person's benefiting from something that you bring to the table at your expense, and they want to keep that dynamic going. So they use that with emotional manipulation. That emotional manipulation gets us to go play their game, but then, yeah, we're always feeling depleted. We're always feeling like, I don't know who I am, because we just get lost in all these other things. The people pleasing, it's just taking that step back and, okay, yeah, is this relationship balanced? Like, is it giving and receiving, or is it just me giving all the time? And so we take inventory of that. We try to see, like, okay, can I take some steps to balance the relationship out? And if I do, that would be me forming boundaries. It would be me communicating my value and honoring that and not giving in to everything all the time. The third kind of barrier is a bit of an ego trap where it's like I'm viewing things through this lens of failure or disappointment, where with this work we shift to everything's an ongoing process of like self-discovery where you're just continually learning and growing, and each mistake you make, each thing that doesn't go the way you want it to, those are opportunities for us to learn and grow and expand out of that thinking. But a lot of times when things don't work out, we start to attach that to our identity. So we take on the disappointment and letdown, and we may identify as a failure. We may identify as like, I don't follow through. And so as soon as we start to bring that in, that starts to be my experience where I don't see any other way. And that's can really tank our confidence and our self-worth is if I'm not able to create the things that I want in my life. And so there's always a path to it, but we can't create it from that way of thinking because that's going to be sabotage. The mind's always motivated to prove itself right with our beliefs. And so if I believe I'm a failure, anything good that happens to me, I'm going to ruin it. It's really kind of shifting out of identifying with these lower level thoughts about ourselves, right? So it's about forming this healthier relationship with ourselves so that we can move past that way of being. And so that is going to be about stepping into our self-worth, stepping into our value.
Let's talk about things folks can do to move towards owning their power or stepping into their value.
The first thing is what we talked about is creating space initially. So I think boundaries are for us to get clear on who we are. And once we do that, we're trying to embody that energy. And then we don't necessarily like have to hold these like strict boundaries with everybody all the time. But initially, we probably need to create that space so that we can get clear on who we are. From that place, you start to identify your value system and your non negotiables. And that is about protecting your future as well. I want these things. And so I need to start to align my life to match that. I might need to protect my energy certain ways. I might need to protect my time and my commitments. And I need to put time, energy, and focus into the things that matter most to me. So, first, it's about creating that space, getting clear on who you are and what you want, and then starting to adjust your life in a way that lines you up with that. And so part of that is there are going to be some of these relationships where people are takers or things are going to be in conflict with you pursuing what you want. And so that's where we have to formulate some boundaries. We have to get to this place of like, hey, I can't do this anymore because I want this thing. And so that's why it's important to get clear on your desires because that gives you that permission to say no. Okay. If you don't like have anything going on and you don't like want anything, you just kind of settle for whatever as well do this because I don't have anything else going on. So it's more about once you're clear on that and once you start to get excitement in building in that direction, it's like, oh, I can easily say no to this person and disappoint them because it's for my own good, right? Because that's what's going to help me get to where I want to go. And so we may need to initially form those boundaries and communicate those clearly with people. And if people aren't respecting them, that's where we have consequences. And the consequence is generally us walking away. Okay. So, hey, if you can't, I communicated this, If you can't respect that, then I have to limit my exposure to that person. You deny access because they're not respecting your boundaries. And so because that's spilling over and it's affecting your ability to pursue what you want. And so that's kind of that first stage is kind of there are going to be maybe some supportive people around you that will kind of hold you accountable to your own goals too, right? They might be the people that have tough conversations with you being like, yeah, like you said you want this, but then you're doing all these other things, like that doesn't match up. Okay. So we have people that will actively try and sabotage if we let them. And so that's where we hold the boundaries. We have people that might try to hold us accountable, and we want to find our part in it. Is what they're saying true? Do they have my best interests at hand? Those types of things. So there might be some good feedback in there as well. Because all these things are difficult. It's just we're in our own little world, and sometimes we're not fully conscious of the things we're doing that are in conflict with what we want. And so sometimes we need that accountability too. And that's also the purpose of coaching, is that aspect of things. Is like, hey, you keep doing these things, but that's in direct opposition to what you want. Let's figure out how to line up those pieces. We practice kind of smaller walkaways, right? I'm not feeling honored and respected here. What are some things I can do to limit the relationship or to provide consequences for the other person so that they start to value me more? And if we're available all the time, if we say yes to everything, people expect that. And so in that place, if we start saying no, like they might have some, then we might get some backlash from that. They might be upset by it. They might be disappointed because they're taking all this time and they're used to us giving. Those are the things we have to look at. It's like, where are those relationships in your life? What are some stands you can make to start to shift the dynamic? Okay. Because that's all we're trying to do is we're trying to, and we want to continually reinforce those boundaries. We denied access and they felt that consequence. And if it's an important relationship or if it's family or whatever, you might be like, okay, I'm going to give a little space and then we'll try again. When we try again, like, is it different or did they just try to overpower again? Okay. And then, okay, now I form the boundary again, even stronger, and I take more time and space. And I may vocalize some things. I may communicate how this thing's out of balance and how it makes me feel. And if somebody doesn't care how you feel about it, once again, that's like a self-serving person, right? Where they're probably just concerned about their needs, right? And so we keep working those puzzles of like, where can I make some stands? Where can I show up differently? Where can I embody my values more? At the end of it, it's like, once again, we're trying to create this like deeper purpose, this deeper why, because that's what allows us to go through that hard work. I need to have something I can latch onto that I know is going to pull me in a positive direction. And that's worth me saying no to people, that's worth me disappointing others. Because when I disappoint others, I get that emotional energy thrown at me. And that's what's tough for us, right? Because then it activates our people pleasing where we're just like, it might plug us back into childhood. And so I need to learn to disappoint others in exchange for not disappointing myself. Okay. So that's that. When I have a purpose, when I have things that really matter to me, I start to have reasons for saying no, and that starts to build that confidence where I can start to move in that direction because I'm less worried about the emotional backlash from other people that are just kind of taking all the time. Creating the space, identifying problem relationships, forming boundaries. Once you're clear on what you want and once you have that deeper connection, it's easier to do those things. And it may be painful initially because you might feel like you're doing something wrong, but that's just kind of burning off the old stuff. That's burning off the old people pleasing patterns where if many of us were raised with like kind of the silent treatment and stuff from caregivers, right? So if I did something wrong, like they removed love, they didn't like speak to me, like all that stuff. And it puts you in this place where you internalize a lot of bad things about yourself. And so we're trying to shed that, being like, yeah, that's not really true. That person was just emotionally immature. They were very stressed. They were really plugged into survival. And so they couldn't really love me. They couldn't really be there for me because they were too wrapped up in their own stuff. It's it's just really getting to that deeper core of things that allows you to sustain your path because it is difficult work. If we've had a dynamic going on for a very long time, that other person's going to expect those things from us. When we plant our feet and stand our ground, yeah, they might try to, if they can't get at me, they might try to create problems around me. They might talk shit. They might spread rumors, gossip, whatever it is, to try and affect me in other ways, even if it's not direct. So, so that can be a challenging time period. And it's just because you're denying them access. You're shutting that. You're like, hey, I'm no longer willing to meet those needs for you. Like those are needs you can meet for yourself if you would take some time and do that. Right. But it's some people don't want to do that. That's where the emotional manipulation comes in. And that can be pretty strong and pretty destabilizing. It's when we have the deeper purpose, we start to see like, hey, it's worth it. It's worth disappointing this person. It's worth changing the dynamic because now I'm feeling better and better about myself.
If we could just put a bow on this conversation a little bit, what are the final takeaways that you're hoping people are thinking about as they get to the end of this episode?
Yeah, I think it's just really kind of connecting to where you're giving too much in your life, where this giving and receiving is out of balance, where I feel like I have to give too much in order to maintain the relationship. And so we're trying to balance it out. And so that is in order to do the balancing out in those relationships, I do need to stand my ground. I do need to form these boundaries because that's how I get the person to move my way to start to create that balance. So that may or may not happen, right? It's you have to have two willing parties. If you plant your feet and somebody's not happy with it and then you lose them, well, like, was that really a good relationship? And so those are the kind of the risks we have to be willing to take because the meaningful relationships, it's going to be people that will own their part in it and take a deeper look. And because they might not consciously be doing these things, right? But once we bring it to their awareness, now they have the awareness of it. So that's where we can make change. And if somebody is willing to own their part and work with us on it, we can reorient the relationship in a healthier way. And so deeper relationships, that's easier to do because you kind of have this longer track record. Superficial relationships, those are generally fall off pretty easily because it was just built on you meeting a need for that person and they didn't really, you weren't really getting anything out of it. And so that really doesn't serve that dynamic. So we always do prompts here. So I would say a good thing to journal on or question yourself about is where are you staying too long? Where are you not owning your value? Where do you feel like the relationship's unbalanced? What would it look like for you to walk away with dignity? Okay. So that's about self-respect. It's about connecting to your value. And if you're not being treated fairly, we want to start to conceptualize like, yeah, what are some walkaways you could have that would start to rebalance out that relationship so you can feel more valued and respected. And super important work here. Like it is difficult. We get caught in these patterns and we just live them out. And so when you change, there is the awareness from the other person that you're changing to, and that can destabilize the relationship. It can create problems, but the good ones will stick. The good ones, maybe somebody's just in a phase where maybe they used to be like a really good friend and it was balanced, but maybe they've gone through a lot in their life and they're super stressed. And so they have less to offer from that place. And so there's those things too. There's phases that happen where we don't get the best version of somebody. We have to trust that long term, like if these things are meant to work out, they will. And the answer is always choosing yourself and choosing your value and choosing your worth and self-respect. And so we're always just trying to connect to that because that's how you get access to the things you want, which is really, that's what we're all here to do. If somebody's taking from us all the time, is because they feel like they need something from us. That's in accordance with what they want. So a lot of times the shaming will be like, oh, you're being selfish, but it's really that person being selfish, which is an interesting, they're kind of telling on themselves. Our best relationships are safe relationships. They're where we feel valued, where we can trust the other person, where we feel like they have our best interest at hand, just like we have for them. And it should be this mutual exchange most of the time. There may be periods where they might need more or we might need more, but it should balance itself out over time. So those are the things we want to look for.
If someone is wanting some more information or wanting to go deeper with you, let's talk a little bit about where the best place is for them to find you.
You can visit my website, brandonthielk.com. So on there's a few options for you. So you can book a strategy call with me. It's 30 minutes where I get to know you and share how this work can help you. So if you're looking to go deeper, that's one option. Two You can register for my newsletter. So each Monday I send out the lightning report. And so that gives updates on what I've got going on. Also some insights and some prompts for the week. So we're always trying to go deeper. We're always trying to question. We're always trying to look at things differently. And so there's generally some reflection exercises there. So you should get a lot of value out of that. Third, I'll be doing an in-person event outside of Madison, Wisconsin on October 25th. So that'll be a full day workshop, calling that Unstuck, a day to break free. And so that for the first half of the day, we'll be teaching about what's holding you back, what's creating that stuckness, and some tools to work through it. And then the second half of the day will be live group coaching. So we'll work on the problems that are present for you. And it's cool to do that in a group environment because we all have pretty similar struggles. And it's easier to kind of see it through the lens of other people sometimes. And so that's helpful. I'm also offering one-to-one sessions on the front end and the back end of that workshop. So the 24th and the 26th. So if you'd like to get some one-on-one work, there's an opportunity there. So you can register for that on my website as well. Yeah. So if you're in the Midwest or even if you wanted to travel, that'd be cool to see you. I'd love to connect with you guys in person and make some breakthroughs happen.
Sounds good. I'm excited about that one.
Holly will put the links on everything. And also there's the follow along at Brandon Thielk on Instagram and YouTube. Stuff up there all the time. Some insights and some perspective shifts that we're always talking about here. So thanks. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Would love to hear from you guys. I look forward to the next time. We'll see you.
See you later, Brandon.